Today we move into Acts chapter 4, and honestly, this chapter feels incredibly relevant right now because Acts 4 is about what happens when truth confronts religion. You see, Peter and John were out teaching, and they were teaching openly about Jesus. They're proclaiming the resurrection, and people are believing. Thousands are coming to faith. But instead of rejoicing, the religious leaders get jealous and become offended. And honestly, we still see that today. Religion becomes uncomfortable when truth challenges comfort, complacency, pride, or control. Truth confronts comfortable religion, and religion gets uncomfortable. Peter and John are arrested, and they're held overnight. The next morning, they are brought before the high priest, and they're questioned, "By what power or authority did you do this?" Peter was filled with the Holy Spirit and boldly points them back to Jesus. Not himself, not his gifting, not his power, but to Jesus. And honestly, I find it interesting that Peter keeps reminding them, you killed him. The same Jesus that they had rejected, God had raised from the dead. The rejected stone became the cornerstone. What religion rejected, God established. Peter boldly declares, there is salvation in no one else. Jesus alone saves. That's still true. And then we get one of the most powerful moments in this chapter. The religious leaders recognize Peter and John are ordinary, untrained men, but they recognize something very important, that they had been with Jesus. Boldness is the evidence of having spent time with Jesus. And honestly, this matters because so many people think boldness comes from education, status, followers, influence, platform. But Acts says that's not the case. Boldness comes from being in the presence of Jesus. When we look at this in the church today, in Western culture, a lot of the time, people are chasing influence over intimacy. They want to have the followers, but they don't spend time with God in His Word and in prayer. Now, back to Acts. The leaders, they can't deny the miracle that's happened. The healed man's literally standing there in front of them. So instead of disproving the truth, they try to silence the messengers. The enemy does not need Christians to be destroyed if he can just keep them quiet. But Peter and John refuse, and they say, we can't help speaking about what we've seen and heard. It's too good to be quiet. That honestly convicts me, because by nature, we talk about what we genuinely treasure. We will boldly talk about sports, entertainments, our political stance, hobbies, children, success, but all too often we stay silent when it comes to Jesus. If Jesus has truly changed your life, eventually it's going to come out of your mouth. When Peter and John return to the believers in the church come together in unity and in prayer. And notice, they're not praying for comfort, they're praying for boldness. Guys, they're being persecuted, but yet they're still praying for boldness more than comfort. As they pray together, united with single-minded focus, the place begins to shake, and they're filled with even greater boldness. What would happen in the church today if we prayed with that kind of unity and single-minded focus? We talk about wanting revival. It begins with prayer, united, passionate, pursuing Jesus prayer. It's about depending on God, not our performance. Now, back over to Acts, we see the church functioning as the church, unified, generous, serving one another, taking care of one another, focused on Jesus together. This is consistent. The church of Acts was not built on celebrity. It was built on prayer, truth, surrender, boldness, unity, and the power of God. Acts 4 reminds us that spending time with Jesus changes us. And when believers stop chasing comfort and start pursuing the presence of God, boldness follows.